Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us for the Garden Hour. I'm Kathi Mecham. I'm your host today, and I am located in Carroll County at the Carrollton Extension Office. And joining me today are Traven Crocker, and she's in the Poplar Bluff office, and Jennifer Schutter will be joining us. She's in the Northeast region. Now, you are welcome to ask us questions anytime during the presentation. Just put them in the chat, and someone will get the questions to the presenter. If for some reason we can't get to it today, be sure and put your email address in there so that someone can contact you with the answer. Next, let's look at the coverage map. On my, let's see, there we go. So if you, there's a horticulture specialist that covers your county, and here's a map of all of us. So you can just look for your county and find the horticulture specialist that covers your county. And if you've got questions, you can reach out to them. Over to the side is their email address. So for instance, Katie Kamler is in purple. You can see all the counties that she covers. Next, we're going to go to Zack with the weather.
Great. Thank you, Kathi, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the August, where it feels like we're in the dog days of summer here. But I did want to start by looking back at how July ended since the last garden hour here. And it should come as no surprise that it was a warm month. And so Missouri's statewide average July temperature was nearly 2 degrees above average. So a little warmer than we usually see in July, but nothing record-breaking for the month there. And if we see here the bar graph showing our temperatures here, the red bars show months where we've had warmer than average temperatures, and the blue bars show cooler months. So you see June and July back-to-back warmer months, so really getting a real feel of summer there. Now, it has been dry lately, so it might be hard to remember all the precipitation we got in the first half of July, really. But we were still kind of in that early summer wet pattern to start July. So our statewide average precipitation was 1.26 above average, so a wet month for July. And if you look at the bar graph for precipitation, you can see we've really had a wet growing season up through July. So April, June, and July were all wetter than average. May was slightly dry, but that's one of our wettest months of the year. So lots of precipitation this year. If we kind of add up the first 7 months of the year and see what we're on pace for, we are having a warm year in 2025. So far, temperatures have been just above a degree Fahrenheit above average. And as I just mentioned, certainly a wet year. So our statewide average precipitation just over 4 inches above average there. But if we look at the last 7 days of rainfall, and that's what this map shows, this is estimated from radar precipitation, we see some dryness, and that would be white spots on the map that haven't seen any rain over the past week. I do want to note, really, most of the rain you see here was Sunday through yesterday, Tuesday. And it's really been confined mainly to southeast Missouri, a little bit in west central Missouri here. And I also want to point out just these pockets of localized precipitation. And so you see areas of low precipitation right next to these greens and yellows that show a few inches of rainfall. And if you've been out around the state the past month, this is kind of our story where we have these pop-up thunderstorms that might drop an inch in one location, but miss another location nearby. So kind of hard to get widespread rainfall lately. But we also looked yesterday, that southeastern rainfall not only gave us some of those good totals, but also produced a little bit of severe weather here. And so we did see just yesterday 19 severe thunderstorm warnings along with some of that rainfall. And most of that was due to some gusty winds. And I know there was a few trees down in southeast Missouri, along with a report of hail there. So yesterday was probably our most active weather day, at least for the next week looking forward here. And so we went through kind of the year for Missouri. August really turns our pattern once we've gotten into the calendar month of August, because we've seen temperatures a little bit closer to average, but we've really seen drier conditions here over the past 30 days or so. And so this map on the right shows our month to date for August. Percent of average precipitation. So where you see those reds, those are areas with less than 100% of precipitation so far this month and are running drier than average. And you see nearly the entire state is red here. These pockets of blue where we do have surplus moisture, really just a matter of luck. These are really small, isolated areas that got under the right thunderstorm that dumped a good amount of rain. But for most of us, the narrative has been that we've really kind of dried out this month. And if you look at some of the larger metros around the state here, all running below average for precipitation so far. And temperatures are pretty close to normal, anywhere from 0 to 2 degrees above average here, which might continue what we've seen in June and July. Now, with this lack of precipitation we've seen in August, we are seeing the return of some conditions on our U.S. drought monitor map that updates each week. And at the end of July, this was a completely blank map, all white, and we didn't have any part of the state that was designated in any type of drought or abnormally dry. But that's been creeping up the past few weeks here, and now we see 34% of the state, especially southern Missouri, is currently listed as abnormally dry here in yellow, with even some emerging drought along the Arkansas border here. So starting to see the return of these dry and drought conditions as we get into the late summer and fall here. So let's look ahead now that we've kind of summarized where we're at for the month. These are the high temperatures for today. And, even though we're still in the upper 80s and near 90 degrees, it definitely feels a lot better outside. We've knocked back that humidity that's been plaguing the state for especially the past 7 days. And that's because if we look at our current surface chart here, we've had a cold front move through, and that's what brought that rain in southeast Missouri yesterday. Behind that cold front, we've got these clear skies, but also a lot lower humidity with temperatures knocked down a few degrees there. So definitely some relief, and it looks like temperatures will be really much of the same for Friday and Saturday. But then we're actually going to have a secondary kind of reinforcing shot of cooler air later in the weekend, and look at these high temperature forecasts for Monday here. So with the exception of the boot heel, the entire state of Missouri might stay below 80 degrees on Monday, highs in the lower 70s across the northern part of the state. A lot of these high temperatures are cooler than some of the low temperatures we've been seeing over the past few weeks. So a huge cool down on the way. We've already looked at the highs for Monday, but these are the lows on Monday night. And yes, it's August, and we see some upper 40s here in the forecast for Northeast Missouri. So a very cool pattern that I think will be welcome for just about all of us here. But with the cool temperatures, we are going to dry out as well. So expect some pleasant weather, but that's not good for some of the emerging dryness we're seeing too. So this is the next 7 days, how much rainfall is forecasted to occur. And you'll see not all of Missouri is expecting to get some rain. So dry in the east. We see a little bit higher rainfall totals in the forecast for western Missouri, but I'll note that all of this moisture you see in the forecast is really for late in the period. So maybe Monday or Tuesday of next week, and we'll have to see if the forecast materializes there, because that's still 6 or 7 days out. So dry in the immediate future here for Missouri. Now, looking ahead, these are some outlooks here from the Climate Prediction Center, and this is for the week 2, which will take us into Labor Day and the start of September. Look at the bullseye over the really kind of corn belt here. The forecast is for those below average temperatures to continue through the end of August and into September here for Missouri. Now, we see here in week 2 some of the dryness that we're expecting this week moves off to the east here, and maybe we'll start to see at least more average precipitation or even some wetness return in week 2. So that could be good for our drought situation. Now, these forecasts are a little bit out of date, and the Climate Prediction Center will release some updated forecast here. But this was their forecast for August here. So we do see there was a forecast for warm conditions across the U.S. with kind of a hole here over Missouri. And I do think that's going to verify. While we're a little warm right now, I think this cool down will knock down temperatures to really bring August to right about average for temperatures. And if we look at precipitation, the forecast was for equal chances of wet or dry, but as we know, we've definitely gone dry here. So kind of interesting to look at those forecasts now that we're almost through the end of the month here. But I will end here, and this is the 3-month outlook valid for August through October. And the main takeaway is we are expected to see a warmer than average late summer and fall here. With really kind of that equal chances for wet or dry conditions. So right now, the thought is that most of the drought in the U.S. will stay out over the plains with maybe some excess moisture in the east, but that kind of puts Missouri in a tricky spot. So not a lot of confidence in this forecast, and we'll have to see how the rest of the season plays out here for precipitation. But otherwise, that's all I've got for today, and thanks everyone for your attention.
Thank you, Zach. And it looks like we're going to have some welcome relief, at least for a little while. And those temperatures in the 50s makes me start thinking about having to bring my houseplants in, and I'm not ready for that. Traven's up next and going to got a few questions, viewer questions for us. Traven, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
All right, I was getting my screen adjusted. Okay. So can everybody see?
Yes, we can see it. We can hear you.
Awesome. So kind of thank you, Zach, for the weather. And we normally kind of break in the rules for kind of our flow for garden hour, but I kind of want to highlight 2 viewer questions today that were sent in via email. So our first question was, what are the benefits of providing shade for our vegetable garden? And what are some simple structures that we can erect to kind of help make gardening in this heat a little bit more bearable? So starting off, kind of rewinding a little bit, a lot of our vegetable crops usually do best in full sun, but there are a couple of exceptions where it actually may be beneficial to put up that shade cloth. So some of our cool season vegetables, like our lettuce, spinach, some of our radishes as well, those crops may benefit from that light shade. If we do want to shade some of our other crops, just know like you will actually be kind of having a reduced yield. So beans, beets, broccoli, and cabbage, kind of our list here. Those will, again, like I said, those will produce a crop, but you're not going to see as much. And some of our fruits like blackberries, raspberries, currants, and gooseberries. Currants and gooseberries particularly, they can withstand a little bit more shade and still produce a crop without impacting our yields too much. So I did want to bring this up. And if we also do have a publication, if you are gardening in really shaded areas with heavy tree coverage. So giving you a couple options there. So next, what are some of those structures that we can use? We can either use low tunnels, and we also have the option of caterpillar tunnels. So what this is really just a kind of a cheaper version of our traditional high tunnels. Normally that cover material is going to be the same as row cover, but this can be swapped out with shade cloth or even insect netting to help protect your cloths. Looking at the support, usually our big high tunnels are really, really thicker pipe. But we can substitute those different materials, conduit. I've even seen PVC tubing or kind of things like that. And here along the sides, usually we have a piece of rebar that is pounded into the ground, and our post or pipe is going to slide over it, and we're going to just bend it over and put our netting. This is going to be held down usually with some kind of string or twine, all down there. So definitely want to caution with our low tunnels and caterpillar tunnels. These are temporary or 3-season structures. Wintertime or bad weather, if we get those really high winds, take caution to maybe remove the plastic and take those down before the end of the season. So caterpillar tunnels, if you do want something you can get up and walk around in, caterpillar tunnels are going to be your best bet because they're usually 6 to 8 feet high, and they have a larger width. So that would be kind of, I would say, the best if you do have a large garden area to cover that's going to need shade. There's also our low tunnels. So these are generally 2 to 3 feet high, and they're just going to cover your little garden bed. As you can see in this, our lower photo here, how we have our support, and then how it's held down with those ropes. A big thing with this is that people may not first recognize is that this ventilation has to be managed manually. I have seen some, as you can see here, we have our shade cloth, and some of our cloths actually have, if you order it from a company that has ventilation holes pre-poked in the pre-poked or pre-cut in that top to kind of help with that. But you will, if you are wanting to use this system, you do need to kind of be aware of the heat and the temperature fluctuations and open and manually close those. Kind of going back how they differ from high tunnels. Again, we're going to be removing those when we're not using them. The cost is less, and it also is, these materials may be less durable, but they are portable. So this can be set up fairly quickly within hour and a half. But they do offer a extension of your growing season, but at a lot lower investment for cost. So after, I'll put some links in the chat to some of the resources if you're interested, or just again contact your specialist. So a couple of DIY options. Something really simple is just draping a shade cloth over maybe a raised bed. You could do this again if you do have any hoops. And if you do want to swap it out with maybe a shade cloth in the summer and maybe insect or a frost cloth in the winter, that structure, those hoop structures would already be there. And two, if you have a pergola or something similar that you may be gardening under, you could probably swap this canopy out if you wanted to do container garden, maybe underneath. I know Miss Offenberg, Donna Offenberg, she talks about her salad box of gardening and how it's so much easier, and really the benefits with that. So I feel like the salad box gardening, maybe working with your pergola or in a shade canopy or a shade cloth, would be just really, really great to still make gardening in the summertime enjoyable without trying to be paid for that. So our next question that I wanted to highlight is information on harvesting seed from native flowers and some of the different resources. The first one is, I want to kind of point out too, is our publication of Wildflowers in the Landscape. So this is a really great starting point to ask those basic questions. Why do you want to grow them? How to design and how to use these in your landscape. So we go into the propagation of wildflowers. So it's a brief overview of that. But what I also like too is our woodland, our tables describing the woodland suitable wildflowers for kind of a shade and lightly shade, and for our sunny. So there's a lot of information packed in this publication, and it would be a great starting point. But moving on to the actual identification, collection of our native seeds, one of the big resources, main resources I wanted to point out is from Grow Native. So up here at the top, and I'll put this in the chat, going to learn, and then you're going to see natives for the garden, and then you're going to tab over to native overview, and then you're going to come down to seeds and seedling information. So this is what the screen is going to look like once you get in here. But I want to point out they have study guides, and in this study guide, it's going to, here outlined in blue, it's going to break down the plant profiles, what natives, where they're located, how tall they are, in the growing conditions as well. The middle section is collection and ID. So this is going to give you more of an in-depth view of photos with a frame of reference. So they do have a ruler here where we can measure those seeds, and that's going to help you identify your plants. Next but not least is our stratification guide. So some of our native seeds do need to go through the process of stratification, and that could be kind of simulate the dormancy of winter. So that is also available. And right below the central region seed ID guide for native plants. So this is going to give you a breakdown of what those seedlings look like at the different stages. So it's really, really helpful if you want more information or have trouble identifying these different plants. Another great resource for if you're interested in doing this is the Xerxes Society. They have a really great publication on this topic as well. This breaks it down with a lot of really cool images of actually you've collected the seeds, but now what do you do with them? So proper harvesting and cleaning is really important because you want to make sure those seeds remain viable. So it gives information on how to clean it, and a lot of this is just simple stuff you can find around your household to clean these seeds. So you don't have to go out and buy expensive equipment. That's what I really like about these resources. So we also have some native grasses, and our Trawl Prairie Foundation gives a really good 2-page guide on the optimal collection time and that seed ripening period, and a couple hints and clues of the best time and those different collection practices for those grasses. I think this is my last but not least. The U.S. Forest Service also has resources about your native plants and collecting native seeds. So at the bottom of this website, it has additional resources, and 2 that I really want to point out is our Forest Service restoration and nurseries and genetics. So if you click on here, this also gives different seed males and native plants. I think a lot of the focus on this is some of our woody species and different trees. But again, it's still, we have all kinds of different native trees as well. So if you are interested in collecting those seeds, I'd probably direct you there. And another one is a little article at the very bottom, low-tech devices for collecting, processing, and planting your seeds. So this is really great. Again, looking about, we have all these seeds, but what do we do with them? Some of our seeds can get really, really bulky, and we want to separate the chaff from the actual seed head. So this is a really neat idea and pretty innovative ways to really harvest and clean those seeds. All right. This is the resource list that I'll toss in the chat here. And I think that's all I have, Kathy. So I will hand it back over to you.
Okay, thank you. And those are really good resources for collecting seed and anything else native, if you're looking for any information about natives. All right, well, Ramon is here today, and he is going to talk with us about drip irrigation. If you're talking, Ramon, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I was trying to get unmute and I couldn't. I have to share again and then.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, how does that look in there?
That looks great.
All right. Well, thank you, Kathy. Today we're going to talk a little bit about drip irrigation systems, mainly components, and uh, a few things that you have to consider when you use a drip irrigation system, whether in your garden or if you're a producer anyway. There are a few things to consider, and we're going to talk, as I mentioned, about components. If you see here, this picture shows that several drip tapes are being put in the garden in the raised bed to cover the whole volume of soil in the bed. Normally, drip tapes are used or water hose. I mean, water hoses, soaking hoses. I'm sorry, are used mainly for rows along a line of crops, and we see some more pictures later on. And that gives certain conditions that the drip irrigation has a very good benefit on watering only the root zone of the plants that we're growing and not additional areas where weeds can grow. So in this particular case, it's because you have a bed, you have to cover the whole bed, but normally it's used in a row, as we're gonna see in our next, where it is. And here you see that picture on top is just one row in the garden. And so you use just one line of drip tape to water those plants and avoid putting water to the rest of the area, whether it's a lawn or whether it's between rows where weeds can grow. So essentially, I want to show you here that get a concept of how we put water in the for the plants in the garden or in a production system. And in the old time, usually was by gravitation, using furrows or flooding or subsurface irrigation like they used in Florida, where they raise the water table up to the root zone and then they lower the water table and raise it again as is needed. That's not possible here in Missouri, but it's used in certain areas of the country. Another way that we usually use in the garden, but we don't recommend much of this, is overhead irrigation because, well, it waters the entire area. So you put more water in the ground. That's good for lawns, but not for vegetables or flower plants or beds, because you're watering areas that you don't need to put water, and the probability of weeds growing in there increases. So a lot of people still use a watering can, sprinkler irrigation, and with the wand. And the other reason we don't recommend that is because you're wetting the foliage, and that promotes diseases, foliar diseases on your crop, on your plants. So we usually do not recommend using sprinkler irrigation in the garden. And there are other systems that uses micro sprinkler, but it's kind of the same thing. We do recommend drip irrigation, especially when you have a row of plants or for your trees or for your beds, flowering beds, and you put the line where the plant is so it will wet directly to the root zone and not areas where there is no plants. Yeah, and that will help you to, again, wet only where the root zone is and avoid wetting the foliage for potential disease problems. Pros and cons of drip irrigation. Here we have some things that you may already know, but we're gonna go through them too. Advantages is that it offers automation and simplicity. And this is because you have equipment that you can purchase and controllers that can be programmed, so it makes your life easier. You set up the irrigation a certain time of the day or a certain for a certain minutes or hours, and you just program it and you cannot forget. You want to check once in a while, but it's all automatic. And at the beginning, it's a learning curve. You might be a little complicated, but once you learn it, it's pretty easy. Yeah, we're going to go a little bit more with that. But that could be also a little disadvantage because you have to invest in cost, in purchasing equipment. So and that would be a little some disadvantage too in investing money. Another advantage is that reduces, I already mentioned, reduces disease and weed problems in your garden because you're putting the water right where it's needed and not anywhere else. You water only when it's needed and where it's needed in the root zone based on the volume of the roots. Sometimes we want to water a long time. You don't have to do that. Once you estimate the volume of the root zone, you don't put more water just in addition to wet the volume of that root zone. Putting more water would be waste of water. So you calculate how much water would be needed and determine the length of irrigation, and you increase the water use efficiency with those two considerations. So it's important not to water where the plant is, there is no root zone from your plant, and use the right amount of water only to wet the volume of roots, and you will increase the water use efficiency. It's adapted to many regular landscapes. If you have higher areas or lower areas, you can irrigate different garden zones with different stations. That would help you and to water, let's say, your trees at different time of the day from different amount of water than when you water your crop or your plants, your flower plants, which are much smaller, or your shrubs that would require a little more water. So you can have different zones to water differently each type of plants that you have. Or even if you have pot plants, it would be a different way to irrigate. So that's the benefit of using drip irrigation that can help you to irrigate different plants in different ways. It allows for fertigation. You can put an injector there to fertilize either continuously or once in a while, and that facilitates you to put a fertilizer in the soil. As I mentioned, disadvantage is that it does not wet all the area, only the active root zone. So if the system fails, there is no more water outside the root zone where the roots can go and keep the plant alive. They will suffer right away. So there would be less available water in the soil. So we recommend, if the system works well, short but frequent irrigation event to keep only the root zone wet and not additional area. Requires an investment, as I mentioned before. And the other part is maintenance. You need a high quality water. Normally city water is good quality, but sometimes it has high pH that you wanna be aware of to make amendments to it for the benefit of the plant. At other times, animals or even insects in the ground, in the soil, will damage your land, and you would have to look to repair for leakage, and that sometimes is challenging when the land is buried. And nowadays, the other problem is disposal of the plastic. I mean, many people are talking about how can we get rid of the plastic, and there is no real solution on that. So you want to be aware of that situation. Consideration, as I mentioned before, what is your water source, the availability and quality. City water is more costly, but it's the cleanest. But you may want to find out what's the pH of the waters if you need to fix that. Surface water, if you need more water and you have a pond or a river close by that you can use the water, normally there is a lot of debris in there, plant debris, so you will have to deal with that situation. If you have a well, groundwater, usually it's clean from debris, but they usually have a lot of sand too. And here in Missouri, we may have a lot of area have a pH problem with that water. So you have to have that in consideration to adjust that pH because usually a high pH is going to fix certain micronutrients that are not going to be available for your plant. Water requirements depend on the size of your garden or the area to be irrigated. So you have to estimate what's the maximum water volume that you need in a hot day where evapotranspiration is pretty high. Other components, so we're going to go in more detail with this of drip irrigation. Well, we talk about the source capacity, the flow of that pump or faucet that you have in your house to see how much can you water in your garden, the area that you can water. We're going to talk about distribution system a little bit, or zone controllers, other components that you may need, filter, pressure regulator. This is important when you use drip tape, because drip tape does not handle PSIs over 12 PSI. A water soaking hose can handle higher pressure, but the drip tape, if you're going to use, only handles 12 PSI. You may need a backflow preventer if you put an injector, because the city water doesn't want you to have the chance to that it may backflow the water into the water system, and you're going to put chemicals into the city water. That's very dangerous. Soaking hose or drip tape, you need to know the rate of discharge to calculate how long you want to water and how much water you're going to be putting in the area. In conjunction with that, you need the linear foot of the irrigation hose or tape to see how much is the discharge and the area that you're going to water. Here is a schematic things of your drip irrigation system. We start with the water source here. It goes with a flow meter. If it's city water, you already have a flow meter, but you can put another one. Some farmers do that, but it's not necessary. Then here you have a chemical injection system that you can use to put fertilizer. At this point, you have to put a backflow preventer in if you're going to inject chemical. You have a filtration system, as I mentioned before, for city water. You may not to, but if you have pond or well water, you want to have a filter system. Then here will come the pressure regulator if you use a drip tape, and then some controllers for each area. So this controller here will manage this area of irrigation different than this area, the side, different zones. So you have two controllers, two zones here, and you can adjust those controllers and program them to water whenever you want, for how long you want. As I mentioned before, the water quality, there are several things that you have to see there. If it's pond water or pond water usually doesn't have much problem, but well water, you might want to have an analysis. When the pH, if you see here, the high pH not only have a severe probability of precipitation and clogging the drip tape, because it increases the precipitation of minerals, particularly when it's an alkaline water. But also, as I mentioned, it will fix micronutrients, and you will see this, like the picture here, deficiency, nutrient deficiency in your plant. So keep that in mind when you have well water, or even the city water can be high pH sometimes. This is just to show you different type of ponds and well waters that system. These are more commercial type, but just to have you, if you have city water, you want to know what's the chemical composition of that city water. And the city should give you that information for free. Yeah. Our system controller here they're all in here practically. And essentially, the system is to ensure delivery and performance of your irrigation system. You have in this bottom picture the entrance on the left, and water comes here. You have a pressure measurement there. Then this is the valve, the solenoid valve that is regulated by this controller here. So it will tell the valve when to open and when to close according to how you program this system. This particular here is a battery system, so you don't have to connect it to your electric system. There is a lot of garden. This one is more commercial, but there are some garden systems just like this one. Then here you have a filter. This is a stainless steel screen filter to a very fine. We're talking about 200 mesh to avoid clogging the drip line. Another PSI meter, pressure meter. This is the pressure controller, pressure regulator when you're gonna water within a drip tape. Here's a more sophisticated system. You have a large controller for many stations, as you see here. These have many stations to water different area of the greenhouse or to water several greenhouses. You have a filter here. You have an injector. This is a piston injection, which is very accurate. So it injects fertilizer constantly, and you have a constant concentration of fertilizer. And this is the stock of solution of the fertilizer. There are other systems. Here is the pressure, the piston again, but I wanted to show you this one is what we usually use in gardens, which is an injector that is not as accurate as the piston. What does this? When you put the fertilizer in this bottle, you mix it well to be soluble, and then it's connected. This is the regulator. I mean the controller regulator. For one line, you can set it up for how many times you want to water, how long. But then water goes into the bottle, and then water with solution, the solution with further comes in and injects into the line. And what happened here is as you inject more water, it dilutes the amount of fertilizer that is in this bottle. So you start with a high concentration at the beginning, and the fertilizer is diluting over time, so you put less and less fertilizer into the system. So this is more practical when you put fertilizer once in a while, once a month, or once a week, but it's not good for continuous fertilization. This is to show you some of other components in the system for your garden. Pressure regulators, you have here in this side, on the right side, you have the line with a pressure regulator here. This in the bottom, you see the tape that is connected to the system. This particular connection has a valve in there that you can manage manually. So you can open and close it manually if you want to irrigate that line of plants or not. But that gives you you have to be there to do that. When you have different stations, like in this case, and you connect to a different regulator, in this particular, you have 4 stations. In this one here, you have 2 stations. You set up here's the regulator, the controller, I'm sorry, and you would have to be, I don't have a valve here that I showed you before, but these bottom ones are more for garden. These 2 in the bottom are manual with this knob here that you can move it, and you can set it for every time you want to water, you move it and set it for how long you want to water, and it will shut the water off after that time. This over here is a 2-station controller and valve together for your garden. You can program. This is a battery active station, so you can control each station differently, or for how long, when you want to water, once a day, twice a day, once a week, twice a week. You manage that at what time of the day or night, and for how long. All that capability this system can give you in your garden. And you can find, this one is a 2-station, you can find with more stations too. So this is, once you learn how to use this, is very practical and facilitates your irrigation system or practice. Pot plants, if you want to do, you can use the same system of controlling, but the system to deliver the water might be a little bit different. You have drippers, you have bubblers. There are some that with fixed flow, and there are some with variable flow. Here you have the line on the top picture, the line over here, and these white lines go into each pot, one line into each pot to drip each pot. You see in the bottom picture another picture where this is the line, that's the dripper with the green thing here, and it's connected to this hose, to this little hose here, and it goes into this dripper. Actually, it's just to hold it, and it's a stake to hold where the drip will go. Other cases, you connect directly without this dripper, and the dripper will be here. In this case, on the left picture, you have these stake drippers that will manage how much water will go. Those are drippers, and it will go there. These are the two with green area here is what we have on the other picture. This is the main line. This is a tool to make the hole where you put the drippers or the a feeding to put in there and connect to these holes to go to the place where you want to drip your pot plants. So these are components that you can find this in Lowe's. I haven't seen many in Walmart, but sometimes they do have a few things. But Lowe's and Home Depot, they have plenty of these to see. And in summary, drip irrigations allows you control application of water and fertilizer throughout a network of drip lines. It's considered the best management practice. And you water the right amount of water where it's needed in the root zone and not anywhere else. And I want to leave you with these pictures. If you want to think about it, they're all water with the same drip irrigation system. What is wrong with this picture? And maybe next time we can talk about how to calculate the water strategy, how to calculate how much water you want to put in the soil based on your plant growth and time of the year, etc., and the drip tape flow system. So with that in mind, I'll see if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ramon. There sure is a lot to consider when you're thinking about irrigation, isn't there?
Oh, definitely.
I don't believe there's any questions, or we're just going to move on to Liz Harrison is here today. She's going to talk about food preservation resources. Liz is a specialist in nutrition and health.
Thanks, Kathy.
Yeah.
All right. So when we think about preserving food at home, there's a number of reasons why we might do this. So we might have an abundant harvest. We may want to reduce food waste, and so we're wanting to save our food for later use. We may have a preference over commercially prepared products by using homegrown products or locally sourced products. Home food preservation might be a part of our family tradition. We may find that there's an abundance of a certain food either on sale or at a food pantry, or we may have some special dietary considerations where we're looking at wanting to preserve our own food. So the first thing that we need to take into consideration is making sure we have quality produce. So when you are harvesting your produce, either you locally or working with a local producer, we want to make sure that we are helping to prevent any foodborne illnesses. We want to make sure that our fruits and vegetables are not being contaminated with harmful bacteria or viruses. And when harvesting, we want to make sure not to break, nick, or bruise the skin of the produce. I'll also just share here, I know Jennifer put this in the chat, but the vegetable planting calendar can be useful when thinking about home food preservation. So making sure that we have an idea of what foods are going to be in season, about when those are going to be ready to harvest. And so making sure that we have a plan for what to do with those when they do get to that point where we're ready to harvest. So safe harvesting includes making sure that our hands are clean before harvesting our produce. So harmful bacteria can really easily pass from our hands to the produce. Not all bacteria easily rinses away. E. coli in particular can be really difficult to clean off of produce. And the most effective way of killing E. coli is to cook the food. So if you think about something like a cucumber, they don't do very well when we cook them. They're great at pickles, but not so great when we cook them. And since we don't want to eat all of our fresh produce cooked, it's important to make sure that we're handling the fresh produce in a way that decreases that chance of contamination. We also want to make sure that our harvesting tools are clean and we're using clean harvesting containers. We want to make sure that we're not overfilling our harvesting containers. That can really contribute to that previous slide, the bruising, breaking, nicking of produce. Think about if you're harvesting strawberries, you're not going to want to fill a 5-gallon bucket with strawberries because the bottom ones will turn into instant jam. And that can also lead to bacterial contamination. So in a garden, it is really difficult not to have dirt, but we do want to eliminate that coming into our harvesting containers as much as possible, since the dirt is what harbors most of those bacteria. Similarly, if you're not growing your own produce, but you're acquiring it from somewhere else, we want to follow the same principles. We want to avoid those foods that are bruised, nicked, moldy, showing major signs of insect damage. If we're getting pre-cut produce, we want to choose only those that are surrounded by ice or refrigerated. So pre-cut produce is going to deteriorate at a faster rate than whole produce, and cold storage really prolongs that freshness. So a question here, is fresh produce always the healthiest? And our answer is sometimes, right? So we have some frozen or canned fruits and vegetables that have more nutrients than fresh. If we are using fresh produce, we do want to make sure that we are consuming that quickly. So all of these things are to take into consideration when we look at home food preservation. There are 3 main methods for home food preservation. These have been tested in research. So we use freezing, dehydrating, and canning. When we're thinking about dehydration, we may have 2 methods of electric dehydrators. The top picture on the left is a picture of a vertical dehydrator, and that has some spinach in it. So those are typically the circle dehydrators, fan on the bottom blowing upwards. And then we have a box dehydrator, electric dehydrator on the right-hand side with trays. The fan is typically at the back of that. And so the fan is blowing forward across the food. We can also use an oven for drying, and we can also use air drying methods for things like garlic, peppers, onions. Our 3 types of canning, so there's 3 scientific methods for home canning. We have boiling water canning or water bath canning. We also have steam canning. That's our image that is on the top left. So it looks like peaches, pears that are included in the jars there. Those are going to be methods that we can use for high acid foods. And then pressure canning is a method that's tested for low acid foods and any sort of mixture of high and low acid foods. So you think of if I'm canning salsa, which is a high acid or an acidified food, I can use boiling water canning or steam canning for that. But if I'm going to can a spaghetti sauce and maybe add some meat or some additional vegetables to it, that's where I'm going to use pressure canning as my method. I wanted to bring to your attention a couple of resources that we have. So MU Extension has a seasonal and simple app. I'll put these links here in the chat. This helps you find out what food is in season and how to store it, how to utilize it, recipes, or food preservation. So for example, radishes getting ready to come into season here starting in September. We had our spring set, now we have our fall set. So this is what you would see in the app. It gives some health benefits, tells you how to select them, how to store, and then how to utilize. And it also links to different recipes. So here's a veggie wrap recipe where you can utilize radishes, slicing them up really thin, adds a little bit of a kick or a little spice to that wrap. MU Extension has a home food preservation page. There's also an online course that you can take. So if you don't have local classes that are going on right now, you could always take an online course. We also have our National Center for Home Food Preservation. They have a lot of great resources. Home food preservation is a scientific method. We do need to follow those recipes exactly. We want to make sure we're using tested recipes. We're not just using something we found off the internet, not using a family favorite salsa. And then in Extension, we always like to make sure that people are aware of the resource that we can help with SNAP applications. So you can contact your local nutrition program associate or county office. Extension is also doing a statewide needs assessment survey now, so I'll go ahead and put that link in the chat as well. And thanks to all the people who helped make this presentation possible with all of their knowledge and resources. And happy to take any questions that anyone might have either via email, phone call after the presentation.
Thanks for joining us today, Liz. Those pictures really look good. They make me hungry. And I know that app that you mentioned is very helpful for people. I think we've got time to, Matthew's here and he's going to talk about a topic very dear to my heart, and that's how to pick a ripe watermelon.
All right, can you hear me and see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I will make it quick on how to pick a ripe watermelon. Thank you for having me on today. My name is Matthew Hutchman. I'm a field specialist in horticulture out of Jasper County in the Southwest region. Whoops, hold on. All right. So, I'll give a little bit of background here. So I had a watermelon demonstration and cantaloupe as well down at the Southwest Research Extension and Education Center in Mount Vernon. And that's a research farm, but part of the university there. And this demonstration was loosely based off of some research that Ramon did up in central Missouri, up in New Franklin, about producing an early watermelon by using protected culture. So the goal in central Missouri and in southwest Missouri is to try and hit that 4th of July market to receive a price premium. In the southeastern portion of the state, that's fairly easy to do for them without protected culture, but for us to get in early, we need to do that. So here I'm using a low tunnel. You could also consider a high tunnel or a combination of low and high tunnel to produce an early watermelon here in southwest Missouri. I just wanted to do a simple demonstration, and I had a workshop and showed producers my setup there, and then we kind of talked about the differences between the melons grown in and out of protected culture and learned about some other tips and practices for producing an early watermelon. So I just wanted to give a little bit of background on that. I had two different varieties, Sweet Jim, which was a red seedless melon, and then Yellow Doll, which was a yellow seeded melon, both of which did fairly well. The Sweet Jim is a seedless and it cannot pollinate itself. Seedless watermelons, their pollen is sterile, so you have to plant a pollinizer with them, which that's what the Yellow Doll is. They go well together because they both flower fairly early in the season. The Yellow Doll started a little bit earlier, so it would provide pollen to then pollinate those seedless watermelon and produce viable fruit. So that's why I use those two. We'll look at some pictures of those here in a minute. I also used cantaloupe, one cantaloupe variety just for fun. It was called Athena, and it did fairly well too. Some quick tips I would give if you're interested in growing watermelon. I started mine in the greenhouse. I started transplants on March 25th. That was a little bit late. I think I could have started them earlier than that. The recommendation is 18 to 24 days before you're prepared to transplant. And if you are using protected culture, depending on the climate at the time, I would say in southwest Missouri, you could put watermelon out as early as mid-April if you are using protected culture. In the greenhouse, the seedless watermelon, they like to stay pretty warm, especially right after you put those seeds in the soil and until they germinate. So using a heat mat to improve germination, I would highly recommend. It's a good idea until they germinate to keep them actually close to 90 degrees Fahrenheit if you're able to, and that will improve your germination. I planted these melons on May 6th, so once again, I was a couple weeks late there for producing an early watermelon, but it worked out well for the timing of my workshop. I planted them in a geotextile weed fabric there. I made a little hole for each one, and I used a 3-foot spacing. I had very limited trouble with weeds. There's a picture of them as they progress. You can see the ones on the left have some more vegetative growth as a result of being grown under the tunnel there. And then you can kind of still see a little bit of a difference in vegetative growth even well after the tunnel was removed. All right, now I'll talk about what I'm actually supposed to talk about, which is how to pick a ripe watermelon. And I've learned quite a bit about picking watermelon from the demonstration plots this year. I have 3 different methods that work well for me, and I use all 3 when I go to pick a melon, kind of a combination to make sure I get a ripe one. So we'll talk about those. The first is a thump check. That's the first thing I do if I walk up to a good sized melon in the field. You can thump the bottom of the melon. They say to check it on the field spot. I thump anywhere on the melon generally, but the field spot might work well. I'm looking for a deep, hollow thump. Usually that would indicate ripeness in this case. If you have a high pitched sound, those are going to be considered unripe, and I would recommend going out to your garden and just practicing on them. Get one that you know is unripe, see what it sounds like. You might have to cut one open to make sure you have a ripe one and remember what that one sounded like. I had to do quite a bit of practice before I was able to have a reliable thump check in the field. My second tip would be to check the field spot. We can see there at right on the very bottom of that melon, a nice yellow field spot there. This is going to be where the watermelon rests on the ground, so you have to carefully flip them over to check the field spot. Generally looking for an off-white to yellow color. On the Sweet Gem watermelon, they were a solid dark green rind, and they always had a dark yellow field spot for me. The yellow dolls have a lighter colored rind, and so kind of a creamy off-white color, and those were ripe. So whether you're looking for yellow or more of a creamy off-white color might depend on the color of the melon itself. White or pale green field spot, regardless of the size of that field spot, if it's not quite that off-white or yellow color, that might need a little bit longer to ripen. This is probably my favorite one to check, maybe the most reliable, I would say. I like to check the tendril closest to where the watermelon joins the main stem. So you have it's called the peduncle. That's the stem coming off the watermelon, and it runs up to the main stem, and there will be a curly tendril. You want to find the one closest to where your watermelon joins the stem, and it needs to be completely dried and brown before you pick the melon. There's a circle there to show. There's the tendril on that yellow doll watermelon. And then here's an example of one on a Sweet Gem that is not quite ripe yet. It's starting to brown, but I would go ahead and give that melon a little bit longer. All right, for harvesting your melon, I recommend cutting the stem and leaving 2 inches. You can cut that stem off later, but in the field, I find that to be best, just to cut it with a pair of snippers. You can store watermelons for 1 week at room temperature. You could store for 2 to 3 weeks at 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and they like a fairly high relative humidity as well. If you get much below 50 degrees for a long period, you can start to see chilling injury with the watermelon. All right, I'll talk about cantaloupe real quick as well. Just a few points here. Cantaloupe are a little bit easier because they do have a significant color change. You're going to be looking for yellowed skin for most varieties, which is quite a bit different than the solid green color on an immature cantaloupe. You want to look for musky smell. It should smell like a good ripe cantaloupe that you just cut open. You can smell the melon out in the field before cutting it, and it should have a pretty strong smell even out in the garden or in the field. Another good one, and this is probably, once again, my most reliable method for seeing if a cantaloupe is ripe. See if the stem separates easily with just a little bit of pressure. You shouldn't have to twist or pull that stem off. It should naturally separate easily from the plant if the cantaloupe is right, and it should, if it's ripe, and it should leave a small bowl-shaped depression there. You can also smell where that stem has come off of the plant. That's a good place to smell and see if you have that good cantaloupe smell coming out of the fruit. For cantaloupe harvest, you can remove the stem on them. I usually don't clip them because you need to see if it's separating. So if it separates easily, you shouldn't have to clip it. And then you can store cantaloupe in the fridge for up to 2 weeks. They're not quite as picky maybe on the chilling injury. All right, that is all I've got on how to pick a ripe melon. There's my contact information if you would like to reach out, or I can take any questions now.
Thank you so much, Matthew. We're going to hold on any questions, and if Tim Reinbott is here, he's going to tell us about the Tomato Festival. Just quickly, I know it's close to 1. It always is after 1. If Tim is still here, maybe he could share the flyer about the Tomato Festival. Maybe he's not here. And so Traven is going to step in. Sorry we missed him. This is always Traven, if you're talking, we can't hear you. But
I got you.
Okay.
Sorry about the pause. Do we have the flyer up there?
Yeah.
Okay, so the tomato festival is happening September 4th, 2025. So this is going to be the Jefferson Farm and Garden, and this is actually in Columbia, Missouri. There's actually going to be over 70 hot peppers to try, and close to 175 different tomato varieties. So lots. So if you want to get out, take a trip up to Columbia, Missouri, and see the wonderful Jefferson Farm and Garden Extension Center, take a mini vacation and come try all this variety of tomatoes. Maybe you find some you want to add. If you're not a tomato lover, I would say, I always like to tell folks, have you tried a different variety? There's all kinds, yellows, whites, purples, dark purples, and they all have a different unique flavor. So this would be a great chance for you non-tomato lovers out there to maybe broaden your palate. So Kathy,
Yep. And this is Tim. I'm on.
Okay. Hey, Tim.
Hi. I just couldn't. I couldn't find my unmute button. So yeah. Thanks. Thanks. That was a great description. Also, want to add that we'll have some tomatillos and ground cherries. Those are always a delight. A very surprise for most folks, and we'll have lots of different sauces and other tomato pepper dishes to taste. So, and including tomato lemonade and cayenne pepper ice cream. So we're pretty excited about all of this. And on top of that, we'll have some of you all, the state extension specialist, giving us some growing tips on tomatoes, how to make them sweeter, as well as pest management.
That's great, Tim. And I see celebrating 20 years. So I know
That's right. We started this in 2005 at the urging of Jim Wilson from the Victory Garden, and we've had it grown since. I think we planted 205 different tomatoes, and we think we hopefully will have 175 of them this year. And one thing we included this year were the dwarf tomatoes. And a great thing is you can go out and you can roam through the tomato and pepper patch and kind of see for yourself these things growing, and heck, even pick some and take them home.
I'm growing those dwarf tomatoes this year. I'm gonna try to come to this. I want to talk to others about what they think about it.
Yeah. Honestly, right now I'm not seeing the yield I was expecting.
Same, but I'm not gonna just judge it by 1 year.
Right,
And
we got 18 different varieties, so surely there'll be some of them that do really well. That's the nice thing about this. You can really compare. And some of the students are going to have some different treatments that we compare sweetness. So that's exciting too. Like, does magnesium sulfate make a difference? Let's find out. Things like that.
Well, thanks for joining us. And
well, thank you all. It's been a great morning.
Thanks for hanging around. And I guess we'll go ahead and say goodbye for today. Don't forget, I don't have the slide up, but don't forget September 17th is our next garden hour. And you can go to YouTube and get the recording, or we also provide snippets. So thanks everybody for being here.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
We have a Missouri Ag Experiment Station YouTube channel, and you can check that out and get a lot of what's going on with Jefferson Farm and Garden and the Tomato Fest and peppers. So we'll be showing a lot of that here in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Thanks everybody for staying late with us, and we'll see you next month.